I'd like to get your initial reaction to Hassan Nasrallah's speech. He said that all options are on the table, but he really did stop short of declaring all-out war. What is the possibility of a broader conflagration in this conflict?
I think, unlike some people who were really excited about his speech and they were a bit disappointed that he didn't really call for a full-scale war, I think his speech was strategically calculated and constrained, and it did reflect the kind of atmosphere around world leaders, like that everyone is prepared for war, but no one really wants a full-scale war. So he made sure to emphasize, the importance of Hezbollah's solidarity on the southern Lebanon border, but it still remains within the rules of engagement with Israel.
I thought it was interesting that he laid the blame squarely on Hamas for October 7th and very much so distanced Hezbollah for any involvement in that attack.
Well, that's correct, because this is a very strategic thing that Hezbollah is trying to do by legitimizing Hamas's position as a legitimate resistance operation in Palestine and reiterating that the October 7 attack were exclusively Palestinian in terms of its decision-making and its execution. So in a way, to try to debunk that Iran played a role, or even Hezbollah has played a role in training these individuals or in aiding them. So he wanted to reiterate that it was a merely Palestinian decision carried out by Palestinian factions in order to further legitimize Hamas's position as a legitimate resistance within the region and in Palestine as well.
We've seen these tit-for-tat exchanges on the border in southern Lebanon between Israel and Hezbollah. That has heated up over the last week, particularly on Thursday, where there was a broad assault from Israel. When would the situation be right for Iran to be drawn into this? What would spark that action?
Well, one would be the extent of the invasion in Gaza. So if the ground invasion continues to aggressively occupy Gaza, and here we're not really talking just about invading Gaza, but also occupying Gaza and staying there, and at the extent of what that invasion looked like. And if, in fact, Israel or Israeli army was successful in what they wanted to eliminate Hamas in Gaza. Now, Iran is still on the watch, so it's not in its strategic outlook to now be involved directly with the US. And as we know that if Iran is going to be involved in this conflict, it will not be with Israel, it will be directly with the US. Whether this will be through its proxy Hezbollah in Lebanon, we don't know. But a full-scale war is still a very big probability depending on how big the invasion in Gaza continues to be. And another thing that Nasrallah reiterated today in his speech is if Israel commits a preemptive attack against Lebanon. So here we're kind of outside of the rules of engagement where you stay within the 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers borders, and you try to remain within one soldier for one soldier or one civilian for one civilian. If it goes outside of that rules of engagement, this is where the possibility for a full-scale war that Iran might seize itself then pushed to be directly involved in it.
Can you explain to our viewers the military might of Hezbollah compared to that of Hamas, and whether or not the Iron Dome in Israel would be up to an offensive by Hezbollah?
So the extent of the military control of Hezbollah is still something very ambiguous, but we've seen reports that Hezbollah has gained an incredible amount of smart weapons from Iran in the past 10 years or so. And Hezbollah was able to demonstrate its missile range in the 2006 war with Israel. And from 2006 till now, Hezbollah has gained more support and has gained more smart weapons and more strategic thinking, especially after they went into Syria and they were involved militarily in Syria. So that has given them also a new strategical and defense and offensive strategies. The kind of missiles that we now learn that Hezbollah has from Iran is something it's called the land to air. So they are able to actually now shoot down the planes that are trying to shoot missiles on Lebanon. And that is a new and strategic thing that Hezbollah has gained from Iran. We still don't know the extent of it, but we know that it is a growing force. And we know that Israel still perceives Hezbollah as a serious military threat, and it sees it as a much more military threat than Hamas.
We know that the US Secretary of State addressed the terrorist group in some remarks on Friday. Antony Blinken said with regard to Lebanon, Hezbollah and Iran, we have been very clear from the outset that we are determined that there is not to be a second or third front opened in this conflict. Do you think that American deterrence will hold?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we've been seeing a change of discourse and a change of strategies by a number of Western leaders, including the U.S. administration. So, for example, the U.S. was against a humanitarian ceasefire, but now it's trying to call for a pause. In other words, for a ceasefire, for humanitarian aid to go in. So you're seeing a change of discourse. I think it's because of militarily on the ground, things are changing. And I think because it's starting to show that if things get out of hand, the US might see itself involved in a much larger scale war than it anticipated, and it doesn't really want that. So I think it's really, really good that we're starting to see a more move towards diplomatic and political resolution to this conflict.